The call. The Honourable Steve Whan.
Mr Deputy President, I want to support the comments my colleagues have made on this on the Greens bill, and I just wanted to bring some local concerns about TAFE to the table here, about particularly the charges which the government is putting in place. And I'm very pleased to see that in the other place in his budget reply speech just a few minutes ago, Labor's leader John Robertson has indicated that Labor has made a commitment to abolish the Baird Government's massive fee hikes to TAFE and to ensure that fee hikes in fee rises in the future don't go up by more than the education CPI. Now that's a very important commitment because TAFE, as all the speakers here so far have said, is a really important part, particularly of vocational and other training in regional New South Wales. And if there's one consistent thing that over many years I've always heard from regional communities about education and skills in their area is the vital importance of TAFE. And this government's philosophy puts that at threat because this philosophy of putting all educational provision or provision out to making them commercially competitive, making them operate on the level playing field with the private sector. Everybody in regional and rural New South Wales means that knows it is a recipe for city-based providers taking over courses which were provided by TAFE, offering what seems up front a cheaper price, but when you look at the actual provision and location of the courses is actually less of a qualification and more expensive in the long term because you're not getting a locally based education. And what it will do is put the TAFE campuses right around regional New South Wales under threat, and that is something which we should all be concerned about. Now, this government's policies hit in several ways. First, there is that competition policy, which is such a threat to regional services, and we haven't just seen that in TAFE, we've seen that across a whole range of areas where competitive neutrality has been put in place as a principle and has impacted on the provision of services on the ground by local providers and, very importantly, the consistency of the provision of those services. And I know there is members of the National Party who agree with that, but unfortunately they won't be able to tell us about their issues with that here today because the Liberal Party tells them what they can and can't say. I want to look particularly at the fees for courses at Cooma and Queanbeyan TAFEs. And what we've seen from this government just recently is the announcement of a new, under their Smart and Skilled model, series of fees for courses which they say are actually on the skilled list. And I'll come to the courses which are not on the skills list shortly. But for the courses on the skilled list, there's some real concerns with the increases which are being made available. And it is hard to compare like with like at times because the government has moved to charges for the accreditation rather than per semester charges. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that aspect of it, but what I am opposed to is the massive increases which some of those things see. And for courses which are available at Cooma TAFE particularly, in the critical areas like hospitality and commercial cookery, where we see commercial cookery, a single-year course for a Certificate 3, going from $838 to $2,110 under this model being put forward by the government. Or for hospitality, which I understand is a Certificate 3, which I understand is a 6-month course, currently $419 at Cooma TAFE, $1,140 under this government's model. Now, I, not surprisingly, when I saw these put out a press release, and I was a bit disgusted by the response from the local member and his office, where they emailed the local radio station telling them that Steve Whan had got this all wrong. They pointed out that one of the courses I'd quoted was conducted over 2 years, and I had to acknowledge it. Yes, it was conducted over 2 years, and that unfortunately that wasn't clear on the TAFE website. But there was still an increase in that course. They then went on to say, though, that, with their usual rude comments in this email, that I didn't know what I was talking about because, in fact, these courses weren't even offered at Cooma TAFE. What they were saying was, their claim was that hospitality and commercial cookery were not offered at Cooma TAFE. Now, if that was the case, that would be an absolute disgrace for a key tourism part of New South Wales. It would be something that we should all be ashamed of. In fact, the truth is they are offered. This semester they didn't have enough students to actually take them up, and therefore they weren't actually being delivered this semester, but they are offered. And if the government has its way, The fees they're going to put in place will probably ensure that there is nobody to take them up in future years either. And I was very interested in a statistic that the Leader of the Opposition has just given in the other place. He's found in the budget papers, tucked away in the budget papers, that apparently the government is budgeting on there being 23,000 less students at TAFE next year. And is it any wonder when we see what they're doing to TAFE? We know that they've cut funding to TAFE by a significant amount of, I think it was 800 million, I'm just trying to find my note, and 700 staff have gone from TAFE so far under this government, which is an absolute disgrace for education in New South Wales. 1,000, I think, counting in what they've just announced in this budget, I understand. Yeah, absolutely right. So more than 755 up to this budget, more than 1,000 after you take this budget into account. And I was speaking to a TAFE teacher on the weekend, on Saturday actually, from Cooma, who is extremely worried about the courses she's delivering, which are the courses, tertiary preparation courses, absolutely vitally important to those people who don't, for one reason or another, manage to get the tertiary score that they want through Year 12 and want to do that at TAFE. Now, the other aspect I just wanted to briefly mention is the courses which don't appear on the skilled list that the government has put out. And that includes things like arts courses. And I was astounded to see the Treasurer responding to a question without notice in the other place yesterday, where he demeaned people who do ceramics courses and said they weren't, implied they weren't particularly economically important. Now, I'd acknowledge that it's not unreasonable to expect if someone's doing a course for a second or a third time for a hobby, that's exactly the same courses. It's not unreasonable for them to pay the full fee. But when someone's doing the course for the first time, to ask them to pay the full commercial fee is, I think, ignoring the fact that many of these courses do have an important economic benefit. And I go back again to the Snowy Mountains. One of the biggest tourist attractions at Easter every year in the Snowy Mountains is the Lake-like Sculpture Festival on the shores of Lake Jindabyne, something which under the last government had several years of local major events funding to get it underway and is now a very successful tourist attraction. Now, where do the people who do those courses get the skills? They used to go to the TAFE, and they got the skills from doing the welding courses at the TAFE in that particular one. But for the other art exhibitions which go around the area, they used to get those at the local TAFE as well. And it's a real shame that we see the government demeaning the importance of courses like that, which actually in many regional communities play a vital role in arts businesses for the local area. And just because they're not in what this government sees as being the economic drivers of the state doesn't mean that they should be completely dropped off the list for government support. The fundamental principle this government is operating under is that it's going to give a private provider in the TAFE exactly the same amount of money to deliver the same course. The problem with that for regional New South Wales is that we will see those local TAFE campuses disappearing as private providers based in the city undercut the TAFE but don't offer the same standard of education. And it's a disgrace that we're seeing that from this government.